Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah, no, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while.
Anybody who's been through a domestic violence situation, when you share it, you are the one that is freed even more.
We're constantly publishing new content. Be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell.
All right, you guys. So welcome to the Tattoos of My Soul podcast. And today I'm excited because we actually have a repeat guest. This is Karla Bradley's second time on the podcast. So I want to welcome you back. Thanks for coming back and talking with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. The last time we had you on was in February of 2022. That was your first time on. And we talked about, I'll just to kind of refresh people's memory in case they didn't see that episode, but we talked about the fact that you are a wife and you are a mom of, at that time, 8 and now you're a mom of 9 because you have since had your 9th baby, a little baby boy, Bo. And we just talked about kind of your life and the fact that you're an author, you're a blogger, you do these amazing camper flips, which are you still doing the camper flips? I haven't seen any for a while.
I say that I hit pause on that for a minute, but we'll see.
Okay. Yeah.
It might be a permanent pause. It might be a temporary one, but for right now it's a pause.
Okay. I got you. So I'm excited for when you start those because I always I will just look because we follow each other on social media. And I encourage our listeners, if they don't follow you, to go to your Instagram page, which is it Bradley Adventures on Instagram?
The Bradley Bunch Adventures. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And check out your camper flips because they are literally, last time we were on, I was like, I would like to live in one of your campers. They're so amazing.
They're so cozy.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So, but you definitely have your hands full. So, what are the ages of your kids now?
Okay. So we have 9 kids and my oldest is 15. And then we have 13, 11, 10, 8. We have birthdays, so I have to think.
Yeah.
6, 5, 3, 6 months.
That's amazing. Yeah. Actually, and I have 2 children and I sometimes get how old are they again? I can't imagine having 9, So, well, I'm really excited for you to share your story today, another part of your story, because, and this is kind of a spur of the moment podcast. So I just saw on social media, because again, we follow each other on social media, and I saw last week that you had shared a part of your story that is it's a lot more on a serious note, obviously. I'm going to let you get into that in just a minute, but I was I admired your post so much because I could see that it took a lot of strength to be able to be transparent. And you admitted, you said, look, I'm nervous about this post. I'm a little scared to put this out there, but I'm just trusting that this is the right time and trusting God with this situation. And so I reached out to you over the weekend and was like, hey, I just want to give you credit. And if you ever want to come on the podcast again and share it, let me know. And you were kind of like, okay, how about next week? So that's kind of how we set this up. And it's a perfect timing. And again, I'll let you explain with October being the month that it is. It's an awareness month. So I would love for you to just I'm just going to give you the floor and just let you kind of tell our listeners what it is that you shared and this part of your story and what led you to sharing it.
Yeah. Okay. So October is a month of many awarenesses, so many things, but the one that hits home to me that I personally experienced was Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And so I knew that October was that month, and I've known that for many years. And every time October comes around, I'm like, okay, I've got to share this. I have to share this. And I'm like, no, I don't want. I just talk myself out of it, and it just wasn't the right time. And so this year, I knew that October was coming around, and also our oldest daughter is 15, and she started to just talk about, her friends were dating and different things. And I would tell her things like, okay, well, when you start dating, just make sure that the young man is very kind. Make sure that he has a heart for God. Make sure that he treats you so well. And if he ever, I just was going off the deep end. And she's kind of like, okay, Mom,
where is this all coming from? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I visited with my husband and said, I feel like I need to tell our daughter this story before she starts dating, so that she understands why I am so adamant that she know these warning signs and that she finds someone who treats her well.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, yes, go ahead and share it if you feel like now is the time. Because he's like, I will never feel like it's the right time. He was just, it was hard for him for me to want to share this with her, but he was supportive of it. And so I shared this story with our oldest daughter, and I'll share the story in a minute. But after I shared it, she was the one that surprised me with her strength, which I shouldn't have been surprised because she's the most amazing child. But she said, Mom, you were so strong going through that. You need to share this story. She goes, this is our story.
Wow.
And she goes, you need to share this.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. I go, if you give me permission, I will share in October. And she's like, this story is going to help people. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm like, gosh, you are so amazing, And so that is why I decided to share it now, and why I decided to share it with her in like earlier this year. That's all of the whys. But here's the story. So when I was I think I was 21, well, first let's back up a little more. So when I was a child, I was raised in a church home. We went to church, and my family was a Christian family, and they were loving parents. And, you would assume that I would grow up and live happily ever after. And that, that was it. And I had the best, start to do so. And so I left home. I went to college, and I was a good student. I made all A's. I attended college. I got my degrees, but I did not go to church. I did not, I was not as close to God as I once was. And I know that happens often when kids do go to college. And that's another reason that I really felt led to share my story, is because it's important for kids when they're on their own to continue to stay close to how they were brought up and continue to talk to God. I get that it's hard to go to church when you're in college, but you can and you should, and just stay close to God, because I did not. And I was living a life that was very not Christian. I was just, just a college life. I was hanging out with people that, partied and stayed out late and didn't go to church, and just, it just wasn't, I was far from God. Yeah. And so I met somebody who was similar in that. And he also, I think he probably had never went to church in his whole life, but at that point was definitely that was not on his radar at all. And, wasn't thinking of husband material. I was just thinking, oh, this will be fun, to hang out with this person. Yeah. And next thing you know, there are warning signs of abuse that I did not think of abuse. I just thought, oh, he had a hard childhood, and I just felt sorry for him and thought, well, I can fix him. I can teach him how to not be so angry and not be so bitter. And I thought I could help him. And, he was very mean to me. He would, verbally abuse me. And then after a while, even me, who was brought up in a strong home, started to maybe believe some of that stuff and maybe believe I was the reason that he was so angry, and maybe it was me, and maybe it was all me. Yeah. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't tell my family what was going on. Partly because my friends would feed me that oh, you guys are great for each other. You are so much fun. You're cute. You're a great couple. And so I'm like, man, if that's what they see, maybe it is me, maybe, because they're not seeing it, then what is happening behind closed doors? And so I tried to leave several times just because I saw that this wasn't healthy. I didn't like how I felt around him. I felt like anxious and like I was walking on eggshells and nervous and scared, honestly. And so next thing you know, I'm engaged, and then I was married, and it got worse. I know, it got worse and worse and worse. My parents still did not know. The wedding was anything but the wedding I had dreamt as a child. It was very like secretive and very on our own. It wasn't like, let's invite everybody to celebrate. It was like, almost like, okay, I'm doing this, and okay, let's, I'll make the best of this here. Yeah. And so, then fast forward, a few years of continuing living that life, and it just got worse and worse and worse. I tried to leave a few times. There were restraining orders. There was physical abuse. And every time I would try to leave, it was, I'll get help. We'll go to counseling. I promise I won't do that again. And just kind of make excuses for that behavior. And I would try to give him another chance, which, that was, domestic violence is the most prevalent among women age 18 to 24 years old. And I feel like some of the reason for that, I know for myself, is I had a very kind, forgiving, gentle heart. And I feel like that was in a way kind of taken advantage of. Sure. And I did give him the best, and I tried to see the best and give him chance after chance after chance. And the other reason is, and I've heard from so many women after sharing my story, but a lot of people were raised in the church, and they are told that you never, ever, ever get a divorce. And so for me, that was just not an option. And so every time I was physically abused, I just was like, well, for better or worse, this is part of it. Sickness and in health. He's clearly sick. I have to stick this out. And I just stayed with it because I thought, I was raised that you never, ever get a divorce. Okay. And so I that was not an option. So I was trying to protect myself with the restraining orders, but also trying to remain in the relationship. Yeah. And then I found out I was pregnant, and that was not something that I was trying to get pregnant. Yeah. And I was excited because I was pregnant, but I was so incredibly scared for myself, for the unborn child. I was scared because I thought, living in that home was scary enough for me. I could not imagine raising a child in that home. It would be, I was terrified, like literally terrified. And I remember telling him that I was pregnant, and it wasn't the exciting news that I expected my whole life to share with your husband. It was, I was scared to death. And I told him that, and he said, go get an abortion. And I said, I don't even know what I said. I think I just walked. I don't even know. I think it was just a blur. And I don't think I said anything, but I did. I was so scared for, what was about to happen if I had this baby, that I looked up abortion on my phone. I looked up how to get an abortion. Where do I go? What do I call? And I started looking it up, like, how do I do this? Who do I call? Yeah. And I remember kind of like shaking and just being like, just this overwhelming, like, no, this is not, like the part of me that was still in there after all of that abuse was like, no, this is not what you do. And I told him that. I said, I can't do this. I am not getting an abortion. And he said, well, I'll just have to push you down the stairs then.
What?
And I was
my gosh.
Yeah. And I remember thinking, okay, there's no stairs in my house, so just stay away from stairs. You'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah. I know, right?
My gosh.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thinking of me back then, I could not live one day in that life now. Like, I was so tough back then, or so just in survival mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how in the world I managed, because I could not live even an hour in that life today. But I continued the pregnancy. The verbal abuse got worse. The threats got worse. Found out that I was having a girl, and he barely made it to the ultrasound. But when he came and he found out that it was a girl, he screamed at the ultrasound tech and said that there must be a mistake, and made her check again. And
wow.
So she checked again, and she's like, it's clearly a girl. This is a girl. Congratulations. And he was so mad and said, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me, and stormed out of there.
Oh my gosh.
And I know, the ultrasound tech handed me the towel to wipe the gel off, and she just looked at me with the saddest eyes, and she said, I am so sorry. And I tried to be strong, and I said, it's okay. He'll be all right. He's just in shock. Like I was so like all the bullet points for signs of a person in a domestic violence relationship. Yeah. That was me. I was making excuses for her. I'm like, oh, he just had a bad day. He'll get used to it. Yeah. He's really happy, whatever. Well, anyway, that went on for a few more weeks. Just the anger about that news that we were having a healthy girl, and right.
Yeah.
And then one night I was sleeping, and he came home from the bars, and he was drunk, and it was about, I think, like 3 a.m. And I remember the taxi driver called me and said, how do you get to your house? Because someone's trying to get there, and he doesn't know. He can't tell me how to get there.
Yeah.
And I almost didn't tell him. I almost just didn't. But then I thought, I'm really going to get abused bad if I don't tell the cab driver how to get here.
Yeah.
Because that would be really, really bad.
Right.
So I told the cab driver how to get there, and I was still, I think I did go back to sleep, or I was at least laying in bed, and he came into the house and attacked me, just completely attacked me. And I fought with everything I had to just protect the baby. And I had my hands around my stomach, and he was just attacking me, just hitting my head on the floor and punching me and trying to choke me, and it was very bad. And and I would try to get away, and I would try to run into a room, and it didn't have a lock on it, like a closet or something, and he would come into that room, and I'd try to run out, and it was just this big, it was complete crazy, just this chase and just this attack. And my dog at the time was a gentle Siberian Husky, and the dog started to growl at him, which the dog had never done ever, and that made him very mad that the dog was growling at him. And so he was going after the dog, and I opened the back door to let the dog out so that the dog could get out and save himself.
Yeah.
And when I did that, that distracted him from me, and so he went after the dog. And I grabbed a shirt and some pants and some keys and ran out to the garage. And I remember that my hand was shaking so bad that I hit the garage button, and I hit it twice on accident. So it was like up, down. And I was like, okay, open again. You know? And it felt like everything was so slow. And I knew he was going to be coming after me in a minute. And so I hit the button with both hands, and it went up so slow. Then I realized I had the wrong keys, and so I had to run back in.
I'm like nervous listening to you tell this. I can't even imagine like how it was for you. Yeah,
there's a happy ending, I promise.
Yeah, I know there is. Yes, you're getting there. Yes,
but I'm getting there. But I grabbed the right keys. I got to the car, turned the car on, started to leave right as he was chasing me out the door. And so I'm driving away, and just the adrenaline and just what just happened, and I hurt, and my whole body hurt, and I didn't have shoes on, and it was winter, and it was cold, and I was driving, and I had to call a friend. I was trying to think who is awake at 3 a.m. I'm like, oh, I know who will be awake, and I called one of my friends, and I said, I told him what happened, and it was a guy friend, and I said, what do I do? And he said, you go to the police station. And I said, okay, then what? And he was like, you press charges. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking, of course that's what you do. But I needed someone to help me make that choice.
Right.
And okay, I'm doing this. And so I remember I took a really like roundabout way to the police station so that in case I was being followed, which I don't know how he could have ever even driven a car at that point, in his state of mind, but just in case. And so he couldn't follow me. And I got to the police station and I walked in there and they looked at me like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
wow. Like
Right.
here I am, pregnant, barefoot, like beat up.
Yep.
Just a mess. And they said so they did what they needed to do. They interviewed me, they took pictures, and I pressed charges, and they went to the house and they got him and they put him in jail for the short amount of time that they can keep somebody, which is really unfortunate, but that's how it is. And I got the restraining order. I actually called him to work and said I might be a little late. I was attacked, that's just
Oh my gosh.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so then of course, my boss was like, take the day, seriously.
Yeah.
And so I went to the hospital and got checked out. And I just prayed that, and of course, during the attack, I prayed for the first time in years and years and years. I think I was just ashamed at how far from God I let myself get, that I didn't even talk to him because I was like, oh, I know.
Yeah.
I knew that I was living in sin. And I prayed during the attack, and I said, please save my baby, and please don't let me pass out, because I felt like I was about to lose consciousness a few times when I was hit.
Yeah.
And I said, just please don't let me pass out. Please save my baby. Please save my baby. And so I got to the hospital, and they did an ultrasound, and it was a very detailed ultrasound. It took a long time. They looked at every single thing, and they looked at the placenta so closely. It was a really long ultrasound. But everything kept checking out. And the whole time I saw her heartbeat, and I'm like, I see her heartbeat. I know she's okay.
Yeah.
I know she's okay.
Yeah.
And I just thanked God that he saved her. I was like, thank you. Thank you. And they were afraid that the placenta was going to detach, but everything turned out fine. The stress test was fine. And I said, I promised to raise this child to know the Lord. I promise that I'm not going to continue this life. And so
How many weeks pregnant were you at that point?
I was 24 weeks pregnant.
Okay. Wow.
24.
So well over halfway there.
Yeah, that's right. Just found out that it was a girl at that point, because they didn't do the early ultrasounds back then. It was just, you found out at 20 weeks.
Yeah.
And so then I proceeded to, I actually stayed with a friend for a week. To be safe, I drove to a friend's house that she was actually visiting her family. And so I had never even been there. And he definitely did not know where that was. And so I felt very safe there because nobody knew where I was.
Yeah.
And I stayed there several hours away from the home. And
was he trying to contact you and get you to come back?
Yes.
And I'm assuming, yeah.
yes, all of that again. But
Wow.
it was different this time. It was different. And I went live the other day on our social media, and I had never used this analogy before, but it was how I feel, and I'll use it today. But it was almost like a light switch, like a dimmer light switch. Like in the past, something would happen and it would be like a light switch and you just dim it a little bit.
Yeah.
But when I was attacked while I was pregnant, it was just turn the light off. It was just flip, and it was no going back. It was just 100% done.
I'm
There
done.
was zero, nothing could have made me change my mind at that point. Nothing.
Yeah.
All the words were just hit with nothing. I felt nothing.
Right.
At
because
all.
now it's become about the safety of your child.
Yes.
And not that we shouldn't feel that way about ourselves, but we often don't. And when it becomes about your child, it's a whole different ballgame. So I can only imagine how you felt in that moment, just this is now becoming about, her well-being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. It was so much. And it was just like my first like big mama bear moment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially knowing just how much he did not want that child. I
Right.
mean, like it was like something very bad would happen. Mm-hmm. And so stayed with my friend, and then I went back home because I had to go back to my job. And I've said this in my life too, but I had a degree. I had my bachelor's degree in cell and molecular biology, and I had a master's degree in health administration. And I was working in health administration, and I follow a lot of pages that are saying, you know, how, and I'm a homemaker too right now. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I love my job as a stay-at-home mom. And a lot of people are saying, you know, that women don't necessarily need to go to college. They should just be wives and mothers. And I hear that, and I agree that that is a wonderful place to be. However, in that situation, I was so incredibly thankful that I had my degree. And that was something that no one could take from me. And it allowed me to not miss a beat. When I left and you know, provided safety for myself and my child, it was just, you know, I didn't have to worry about my income and my job and financial and stability and anything, because I was the one providing for that home anyway.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that said, you know, I had to come back. I had to go back to work. And so I did come back, and I continued to work, and I continued to have to report all of the incidents for the violation of restraining orders, you know, the calling, the texting, the showing up, the, you know, trying to take the dog, like all those things I had to report. And so there was that, but I continued to go to work. And I was so fortunate that my family, I had my mom, and I think my sister came for a while, and a bunch of friends stayed with me every single week for about a month. They stayed with me and didn't leave my side. Yeah. And so there was always somebody there just to protect, just to be, like, keep an eye on me and make sure I was okay. And it was I was so grateful for that. And so shortly after all of that happened, my friend called me, who had known me a long time, my girlfriend, and she called me and said, "Hey, why don't you come out and hang out with us? We're all here, and we just miss you. We want you to hang out with us." Like the people that I used to hang out with, you know, before pregnancy, and you know, we miss you. We want to see you. And I said, "No way. Like, I am not leaving my house for so many reasons." Like, and I started listing the reasons, and, you know, at the very top is that I'm tired and I'm pregnant, and and I have bruises on my face, and I'm just not going to be in public. But thank you for thinking of me. And I really wanted to just get off the phone, and I was actually kind of wishing I hadn't even answered the phone. And she said, "Well, you know, one of your friends from high school is in town. You know, Lucas is in town, and he's only here for the weekend, and he really wants to see you and make sure you're okay. He's really worried about you." Okay. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to come out tonight. Tell him I'm fine, you know?" And
thanks, but no thanks.
Right. And she said, "Well, will you at least go to lunch with him? Like, he really wants to make sure you're okay. He's really worried about you." And I said, "Fine, I'll go to lunch," and just to get her off the phone, really. And I was going to cancel or something. I was just going to say I didn't feel good or something. And so she said, "Okay, tomorrow at noon, you know, meet him at the Olive Garden." Okay. And I said, okay. And she goes, "I'll give him your number." And so the next morning comes around, and my mom is there, making sure I'm okay. And I said, "Mom, last night, you know, my friend called me. She wanted me to go out, and now I told her I was going to go to lunch with a friend from high school. I don't even want to go. I'm going to cancel." And she's like, "Why are you going to cancel?" She goes, "I think it would be good for you to leave the house." She goes, "You haven't left the house in, you know, days and days and days. And I think it'd be good for you." And I said, "Well, I'm not interested in going to lunch with a man." And she goes, "Karla, it's a friend. You're going to lunch. Like, you know, just go. You need to just go." So she made me go, and I didn't want to go. So I drove there the whole time, like,
What am I
Why
doing?
am I doing this?
Yeah.
I don't want to go. I look terrible. I feel terrible. What am I going to talk about? Like, I'm just depressing to be around right now. And so I get there, and it's my friend from high school. And he got there early, and he was standing at the door. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, I don't remember him being so cute. What is wrong with me? I am so hormonal right now, and just like, what is wrong with me? Like, why do I think he's cute? Like, Karla, stop it, you know? And so we had lunch, and we just visited, and it was just a really nice lunch. And he just genuinely wanted to see me and make sure I was okay.
Huh, wow.
And so then afterwards, he went back to, he was in medical school, and he went back to medical school, and he wanted to keep in touch with, just to make sure I was all right through email. And we'd email back and forth, and he would tell me about things he was doing up there. And he always wanted to know how the baby was, how my appointments were, how am I doing, how, like, am I okay? Like, you know, just, you know, mentally okay. And then he would, he said he was going to be passing through town to go see a friend on the other side of my town, and wanted to know if we wanted to do dinner, and so we went to dinner, and slowly, like, we just really started, like, enjoying being around each other, and it was time for me to go to my childbirth class to learn how to have a baby. I had never done this before, and I felt like I should probably go.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to be the only mom there without a husband. Like, it's going to be so awkward, but I said, I better get used to this. This is just my life now, you know, and it's going to be okay, but it's going to be awkward. And I said, or I think he might have said, what if I go with you? And I said, okay, if you want to. And so he went with me, and we learned how to have a baby, you know, and we were in the bathroom, all the pregnant ladies, and we all had to go to the bathroom, you know, and they made a comment to me. They're like, your husband is so sweet. He is so, I dropped my earbud.
Oh, that's
they
okay.
Said, your husband is so sweet. He is so into this, and he's just, you guys are just so sweet together. And I remember just thinking, like, oh gosh, if you only knew. You know?
Yeah. Like, if you really knew my story.
Yeah, right. And so shortly after, he had rearranged his rotations so that he could have a rotation where I lived. And so he had a month there right before my baby was born, where it was just, we were together all the time. And it was almost like one of those best of times, worst of times moments in life, because I was going through all of this, but he was such a source of just happiness and calm and peace and just love, you know,
like the complete opposite of what you were used to. Yeah.
Yes. And the logical part of my mind was like, you know, you're probably not supposed to enter into another relationship after leaving such a terrible one, but it just felt right. Like it felt, and I was growing closer to God, and it just felt like one of those moments where God's presence was so much there. And it was time to have my baby, and he was there when I went into labor, and he drove me to the hospital.
Wow.
And I remember he said, "Are you ready to be a mama?" And I looked at him I was having contractions, about to have this baby, and I was like, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
I said, "But I don't think it matters. It's going to happen." And then I just, like, out of just like a nervous question, I was like, "So are you ready to be a daddy?" You know?
Oh, wow.
and because we had talked about that.
Yeah.
And he said, "I have never been more ready for anything in my whole life."
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, gosh, you know.
Wow.
And so, yeah, he's amazing. And so he was there right by my side the whole time. And you know, our baby was born, and from that minute on, I mean, he became a daddy that day.
Yeah.
And he has loved her. He loved her before she was born. He would drive 3 hours to go for a 10-minute blood pressure check appointment. You know, I mean, he was just so excited about this baby. And I could never understand why. I'm like, why are you here? Why are you taking this all on me and this? I mean, all of this. Why are you here? And he just loved us. He loved both of us from the beginning. And so he was, I mean, she had him wrapped around her little finger from the time she was born. He loves her so much, and was more of a daddy than I could have ever imagined. Wow. Ever.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we were still living in two separate towns, and I was still working, and I was still afraid, and I was allowed to bring my baby to work with me, which was really nice. And so she was there, and I felt very safe with that. But she was getting older, about 4 months, and starting to want to like not be in her
crawl,
like,
move around,
in her cradle all the time. So it was gonna be time for daycare, and I was just really nervous about that and what could happen. And I remember I called Lucas, and I said, this is just so hard. I don't like being this far away. And he said, well, just, you know, move up here then. Just move. And I said, but I can't, because I have a job, I have a house payment and a car payment, and I can't just move. And he was like, why not? And I was like, well, I just said. And he was like, just do it. We'll figure it out. It'll be fine. Like, I agree. We need to be together. And so I did. Without a plan, I just quit my job the next day.
Wow.
And shortly after, loaded it all up and moved. And we had a month where I just stayed at home with her, and it was just the most special time. And I felt very safe, and Missouri was where this took place, and they have this program called Safe at Home, where your address is protected, and so all your mail will go to a P.O. box in Jefferson City, and then that place is the only one that knows your actual address, and so then they would then mail my mail to me. So it would take like an extra few days, but all my mail went to that protected address, and so I was harder to find, and there was about 4 years or so where even though I was far away, even though I had a protected address, I lived in fear all the time. Everywhere I went, like literally everywhere, I was afraid. I was afraid that something really bad was gonna happen to me, and that she was not gonna, like, according to the legal system, she was not going to end up where she should with Lucas. You know, I thought it was gonna be bad.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, right after she was born, we tried to start the adoption process so that he could adopt her. And in Missouri, we kept getting, it was just one roadblock after another. It was like, nope. The system up there is not set up for that to be done easily.
Yeah. And are you guys married at this point, or not yet?
At that point, but we were engaged very shortly after she was born, and we were married. So the divorce was final in December, and we were married in February. And I had the fairy tale wedding. It was huge, and it was beautiful. It was in a church.
Good for you.
We invited all the family, all the friends. It was just the most perfect wedding, and we just I would relive that day every day if I could. It was just, seriously, it was a fairy tale. It was an absolute fairy tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we tried the adoption right afterwards, and it was just, you know, one thing after another. It was just no. And I lived in fear. And sorry to interrupt you, but is the biological father like fighting you for custody, or what was the legal battle about? Sure, good question. So when the divorce was final, and this was another answer. There are so many God moments in our story, but there was a risk there that we might have to have like a joint custody thing, and that would be absolutely terrible.
No,
I mean, it was terrifying to think about. But the risk of staying, of course, was way more than this risk I was willing to take. And so the guardian ad litem, which is the child's attorney in a court case like that.
Okay.
He, in Missouri, they most often recommend like a joint custody. And he saw how dangerous this situation was and how dangerous he was. And the guardian ad litem recommended to the judge no contact. He said, my recommendation is no contact. And the judge, I remember he like put his glasses down and was like, excuse me, you know, like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
And he said, yeah. He goes, in this situation, no contact. And the judge took it seriously and said, then that is my ruling. No contact.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there was never any contact. And that was very much a God moment. Like that was the only, I mean, it would have been terrifying to think of any other scenario.
Yeah.
And so, but so the fighting was not fighting necessarily with him. It was fighting with the laws.
The system.
And in the system.
Yeah.
Because in Missouri, they're given like every possible chance. And since there was nothing ordered, no contact, no child support, it was hard to prove that he didn't do something because he wasn't allowed to do anything in the first place.
Yeah.
So it was hard for the system to prove that they should take his rights away when he didn't have rights in the first place. So it was just, it was like this terrible loophole. So then we matched for residency. My husband wanted to go into neurosurgery. And so we matched for neurosurgery residency in Arkansas. And so we got to Arkansas, and you bet the first day we were down here, I was researching adoption laws in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I called an attorney, and he said, oh yeah, this will be easy. And he said, as long as he hasn't been involved in a year, then this is a done deal.
Oh.
And we had spent probably $15,000 to $20,000 in Missouri trying to get this through. And it was not about the money. We would do anything to get this to go through. But in Arkansas, he was like, just, pay whatever. It was like $1,000 or something. And this will be done in 6 months after we say that you have, showed your residency here for 6 months, like proof of residency. And he goes, I'll go ahead and set the court date and we'll have this done in 6 months. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And so I know. And so it was, and it was done. And it was, and I remember the drive home that day, I felt so like, it was like 1,000 pounds had been lifted from me. I felt so at peace because I knew, yes, if something happens to me, I know where she's going, and I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid anymore at all.
Yes.
And I just chose not to live in fear. I just said, I don't like how living in fear feels, and I don't like the joy that it's stealing from my everyday life. And I'm not going to live like that. And so I remember just sitting there on the porch swing after the adoption was final, just feeling free for the first time in literally like 10 years. And so, that was final. And then, I've always wanted a large family. And I remember when I left that day after being attacked, I remember just thinking to myself, I am not going to have a large family, and I am okay with that. Like, it's going to be me and this little girl, and we're going to have an awesome life, just me and her, and that is it. And so, God blessed me abundantly, and we have 9 children now.
Yeah.
We have,
right.
Yeah, right. And we have just the most amazing marriage. And I've been doing posts the month of October for domestic violence. And one of the posts that I wrote was just that I would never, ever wish that situation on anybody. Like,
Right.
I wish it didn't exist in the world. I wish it just wasn't even a thing. However, going through that terrible, terrible dark time made me appreciate all of my life now so much more.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would have had this perspective and had this ability to just have this more calm presence and not get upset about things so easily had I not went through that. And so, before I shared my story, people would ask me, I just don't understand how you're so calm and how you're do you never get overwhelmed, or do you and your husband really never fight? I don't get it. And I would just tell them, I feel like age and number of children have a lot to do with that. And that's true. But the other part is this part, and that's a huge part of it, is that I have been in a home where I was afraid to even come home. I was afraid of, I was literally walking on eggshells. Like any little thing would cause the biggest blow up. And it was so emotionally exhausting that living in my life today, there's really nothing that I can't think of really anything
that even compares.
Yeah, like socks on the floor or whatever. I don't care. Like, it's not a thing. In my post, I wrote that I wish that I wish, first of all, that there was just not domestic abuse. I wish that it never existed.
Right.
But I wish that women could have the same mentality as I do without going through such a terrible, terrible time first. Because when you have went through that and you have lived in fear every single day, and you have you're so emotionally exhausted, and the things that you have to think about and prepare for are things that most people can't even imagine. Like, what if I get locked out of my house tonight? How am I going to get to work in the morning? I better pack makeup and extra clothes, but hide them in my car where the tire goes so he doesn't see them. Like that kind of thinking.
Gosh. Yeah.
I wish it's just exhausting, but I wish they could have the mentality I have today without going through that, because my mentality today is just so incredibly grateful. I'm just so at peace with everything, and I don't mean to sound like goody two shoes, but there's not much that my husband could do to make me upset. I mean, if he leaves his socks on the floor, if he makes a mess in the kitchen, if he doesn't mow the yard, like anything he does is not a thing. And so we just have the best, happiest marriage, because I'm just so happy and grateful for every blessing that we have had since.
Well, I think that's a very valuable, phenomenal perspective. And I think, even I'm listening, what can I learn from your story? And, it's kind of like what you're saying is, don't focus on these things that really at the end of the day don't matter, because this is what your situation could be, and you've absolutely walked this extremely painful path, and by the grace of God, got out of it, and your daughter got out of it, and you guys are safe and protected and everything now. But I can 100% see how you're, kind of saying, like, because I remember that was one of the very things that we talked about on the first podcast was, how do you keep it together in a house full of so many kids? Because that is higher than the average, number of kids for most people. And you are, I've always noticed that about you, how you have this just very calm, even keeled demeanor about you. But now that I understand your backstory, it makes total sense, Yeah. And I think the average person can take a lot away from that, perspective. So I think it's very valuable.
That's my hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. You also talked about, and I want to mention, so I looked at your post, your initial post today, where you did the pieces of paper, and you didn't say anything, but you held up, the pieces of paper that told your story, which is very powerful. And that post got over today. It's probably going to be more of it, at the end of the day, but, currently at like lunchtime, it was over 6,000 likes and 724 comments on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so that right there speaks to how many people can relate to what you're going through. Either they're been in that situation, or they're currently in that situation personally, or they know someone that's in that situation. And that was really powerful to me. And I then read a post, I call it kind of your disclaimer post, where you're like, hey, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, but here is my recommendation, or my kind of my advice to somebody that maybe knows somebody who's in a situation like this. And I wondered if you could briefly hit on some of those things, because I thought your insight was extremely wise. And I was like, wow, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and one thing with domestic violence situations is there's no two that are alike, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you share something, there's so many women that have been in very similar situations, and they say me too, or they know somebody that has been, and it was very eye-opening to me that I knew that I wasn't alone in this, but I had no clue how prevalent it was.
Yeah.
I've heard from women all over the world, literally.
Wow. Yeah.
And that post on Instagram, but then on Facebook, I think it's even more than that. Like,
Oh,
I
is it
shared
really?
on,
Wow.
yeah, and then I shared it on YouTube and on TikTok. So
Wow.
it's reaching a lot of people, and
Yes.
and yeah, and so I want to always I always want to make sure that I'm not giving advice that could put somebody in danger,
Sure.
because it is so dangerous to be in these situations. It absolutely is. And I've heard, I have cried and cried reading these messages, because there are women, like there are mothers who message me saying their daughter didn't survive a domestic violence situation, or,
Yeah.
you know, their sister died and they're raising their sister's children, or, they were also pregnant and their baby didn't make it. I saw several of those. And so it's very dangerous. But yes, so my recommendation, if you are if you know somebody in a domestic violence situation, is not to tell them to leave, is what I said, because that's what initially you think, oh, they just need to be told to leave and they'll just leave. And I mean, then everything will be great. Like, why don't they just leave? But when you're in a situation like that, it's not that easy. And I know that it doesn't make any sense. And for me to think, you know, if I had only lived this life today, I would say the same thing. I'm like, well,
Sure.
they just need to leave. Like,
Sure.
why don't they just get out? But it's not that simple at all, because there's a mental part, and they beat you down so low, and they threaten you, and you believe it, and you're scared.
Yeah.
And you don't even know how to do the basic things, let alone get out and start a whole new life. That's just like, I mean, so I say, don't tell them to leave, because they have to make that choice on their own. Like, you can't tell them what to do. And if you do, they might actually even push you away.
Yeah.
They might say, well, that friend or that family member is just going to tell me to leave, and I don't want to hear that, because that's overwhelming to me. I'm just not going to talk to them anymore.
Right.
So I say what to say differently is, if you decide to leave, because that victim is thinking that already. They want to leave. They think these thoughts. But you just say, if you want to leave, or when you're ready to leave, I will be there to support you, and then do it.
Yeah.
You know, tell them that. Just say, I will be there to support you if and when you decide to leave. And that puts it on them, and they're like, oh, wow, I have support if I leave, you know?
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yes.
And then the other thing I said in that post is, don't tell them what to do. Like, don't say, oh, well, you need to tell him this, or you need to do this, or here's what you need to do. Because they're overwhelmed with every little thing.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear it. And it's just really overwhelming to them. Just say, whatever you decide to do, I will be there to support you. If you decide to go to the police, I'll go with you. If you need someone to talk to, I'm going to be here to listen. And just let them know that you're there on the other side of the phone, no matter what time, to talk to them and just listen. They just need someone to hear them.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And then, of course, the last thing I said was just pray for them, because prayer is powerful, and prayer is definitely something that you can do that, you know, that will have an impact.
Absolutely.
And, you know, let them know that you're praying for them too.
Yeah.
So those are the three
I love
things.
that. I think those are all great suggestions. And, you know, it really, the key piece is support. Just offer the support. I am here when you're ready. And, you know, you're not alone, I think, is the key piece of that. How has how's your relationship with God changed through all this?
Oh man. Just seeing the beauty that he has brought in my life through having a relationship with him is just, there's so many blessings and God moments throughout my whole life, but especially once I once I grew closer to him, I realized God was always there. I mean, I was the one that turned my back on him after college. God was always there the whole time. And he wanted to have a relationship with me. And once I reciprocated and had a relationship with him and talked to him all the time like a friend, and just, and he blessed me abundantly. And not just material things, but just like in my heart,
your spirit.
Just changed my spirit. Yes. And I mean, yes, we have a wonderful marriage and a beautiful home, and my parents and my in-laws live on our property, and we see them daily, and we live this beautiful, beautiful life. And the glory all goes to God. I mean, it absolutely does. Just we've been blessed abundantly. And actually last weekend, we had my older 5 kids and my husband and I, and then my husband's dad were baptized in the river by our house. And it was just, it was very symbolic to just, especially, I mean, my oldest daughter, she seriously is like our angel, because without her, and she knows this. And I said, if you ever thought of your story to make you feel less than, you're looking at it the wrong way, because, without you, none of this would happen. I want you to realize, like God worked through you, to give me strength to leave, to open the door for all of these blessings that we have now. Like you are absolutely our angel, and you're my strength.
That's amazing.
And and I think she feels that, and she knows how loved she is. She absolutely knows. So
no, I love this story so much, because I was reading through your posts, and you're really talking about second chances, and you referenced Jeremiah 29:11, which so many people, it's my life verse. It's got to be one of your life verses.
Yes.
It's like God has a way of taking these situations that look so awful in the moment, and you can feel, and I totally relate to this, completely different situation, but when you are in just that very deep pit of trauma and misery, and not knowing, like, God, I did not expect my life to be in this place. Like, I totally identify with what you said, like great upbringing, loving parents, all those things. And then your life ends up being in this place where you're like, this is not me. Like, where did I go wrong? And it's very easy in those moments, I think, for us to lose hope and to lose sight of what God can do. But, you said, I prayed during my attack. I just, this simple prayer, please save my child. Please don't let me lose consciousness. And that was kind of like you reigniting your connection to God. If I really just listened to everything you were saying, it was like, that's all it took, was that one simple, God, please help me. And that's the amazing thing, is like you said in your initial post, we may turn our backs on God, but he never turns his back on us. And it just takes that one simple, please come into my life. Please show me the way. And he will. It may not happen overnight. I mean, as I listen to your story, you guys had you and Lucas had a lot of things you had to go through. And a lot of times I'm sure you were scared and worried, but just you made it through. And on the other side of it is, like you said, this beautiful life with, you got your big family. You thought that was not, that dream was not going to come to fruition when you left, him, and you still got this beautiful family. So I think your story is a perfect testament to what God truly taking beauty from ashes, and truly taking, somebody's situation and transforming it and making something very amazing and very good with it. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, and I knew that talking about it on social media and then podcasts and speaking, I've been asked to speak at churches. I knew that might happen, the speaking stuff. And I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, but like, if it helps one person, it is so worth it. And there's a few more things that I'm working on behind the scenes that will happen hopefully in October, but if not, soon after, where I'll be able to do something even more to raise awareness for domestic violence. And it's just to use my story to help people is just so worth the sharing of it. And I feel like anybody who's been through a domestic violence situation or any situation, any valley that anyone has been through, when you share it, you are the one that is freed even more. And if it's a person that caused you pain, when you share it, you're almost saying, you're not controlling me anymore. Like, I am free and I am happy and I am able to share this. And any valley that someone shares about is going to be met with a me too, or I understand, or you have helped me. Yep. And there's value in sharing stories.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what you do. I know we talked yesterday when you said you were considering the idea of a book or maybe a devotional, and it sounds like you've got some other things in the work. So I think, and I'm really excited to see what your daughter ends up doing, because I feel like God has definitely got a very specific purpose and plan for her. And it'll be interesting to see, how she uses her unique story to help others, because it sounds like she's definitely got the heart for that.
She's amazing. And I don't think she would mind if I shared this on here either, but it was very soon after she found out about her story. And she even said, Mom, this is our story. But shortly after she found out, she went to a church camp that was already scheduled, and she shared it there on her own, shared it. And she even told me, she said, Mom, it's on my heart to share that. Can I? And I'm like, absolutely. Tell it, And she did. And 3 girls were saved that night.
Oh my gosh.
Because of her story.
Wow.
I know. And that was just the first time she shared it. And I told her, shortly after we shared this story, I said, any worry about genetics or any of that, you do not have to worry about that at all for so many reasons. And I said, here is why. And I told her, I said, my degree is in cell and molecular biology. And I said, I know genetics. I know genetics. And yes, genetics are important. But you know what's even more important than genetics is environment, how you were raised.
Yes.
I said, me and a person on the street, we are very genetically similar. There is very small differences between our genetics. Yeah. The difference is how we were raised and our influences as we were raised. And I said, you were raised in an amazing home the same way all your siblings were raised. Yeah. I said, you are the same as them, and don't ever feel any different from any of them because of that. Yes. And furthermore, if you've seen her, she is my clone.
Oh my gosh.
If God could ever do a copy and paste, he did it with us.
Yes, I have. She is gorgeous, and she is 100% your clone. It's like you guys, you've posted some pictures before, and I've actually done like a double take. Like, is that Karla? Or is that
I know,
Jenna?
right?
It's crazy. Yeah. Well, I love your story so much, and I give you so much credit and admiration, and I think you're incredibly brave because I remember, like the first time we did the podcast, you told me there's this part of my story and I'm eventually gonna share it, but I'm not there yet. And I said, okay, just you got to trust God's timing and all of that, and you clearly have. And I just give you so much credit because it's clearly, the fact that she shared that and 3 girls came to know Christ. There's just this ripple effect that's amazing. So, and the funny thing is you won't even know everything that happens from this story. There will be a lot of things that happen with people that you never even find out about. It won't make it back to you. So it's amazing to see how one person saying, look, this happened to me, this is what God did with my life, can encourage, so many other people. So thank you for sharing. I think it's the perfect month to do so. And I know that, you're going to continue to help people for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And I'm going to have you back for a 3rd time when you write your book or your devotional. So then we'll talk about it then as well. Yeah.
We can do that.
All right. Thank you, Karla.